Michael's finger froze over the record button. Behind the glass, Diana waited, and he still couldn't say the 3 words he'd been holding for 5 years. Diana Ross leaned back in the leather chair at Hollywood Sound Recorders, eyes closed, listening. The funk groove rolled through the studio monitors, tight bass, sharp guitar stabs, that unmistakable synth pulse Michael had layered in at 40,000 feet somewhere over the Atlantic. When the track ended, she opened her eyes and smiled. "Michael, this is a hit." He stood on the other side of the mixing console, hands pressed flat against the wood. "It's for you. I wrote it for you." "I know, baby." She reached across and squeezed his wrist. "Thank you." But she didn't know, not really, because Diana Ross had no idea that 5 years earlier, during the filming of The Wiz, Michael had made himself a promise. He remembered the dance rehearsals in 1977. The choreographer would demonstrate a routine once, and Michael would nail it immediately. Diana would need more time, not because she wasn't talented, but because Michael had a gift for absorbing movement the way some people absorb languages. And every time it happened, Diana would call out, half laughing, half frustrated, "Michael, wait a minute. Don't do it so fast. You're making me look silly." She'd been joking. Everyone knew she was the star, the mentor, the legend. But Michael had heard something else in her voice, a vulnerability she rarely showed. And one night after rehearsal, sitting alone in his dressing room, he'd made a decision. Someday, when he had the skill and the standing, he'd give her something perfect. Something that made her shine. Something that proved he saw her not as an icon, but as an artist who deserved the best work he could create. It took 5 years to become that person. 5 years of off the wall, of learning production from Quincy, of understanding what it meant to craft a hit. And then, on a Concorde flight back from London in 1982, the melody arrived. Now, 5 years later, Diana was hearing the result. Sort of. Because Muscles wasn't a ballad about devotion. It was a funk track about wanting someone strong enough to hold on to. Michael had learned something in 5 years. You can't hand someone your heart directly. You have to wrap it in metaphor, bury it in beats, hide it in lyrics about something else entirely. "So, when do we start recording?" Diana asked, pulling him back to the present. "Tonight, if you're ready." "I'm ready." She stood, stretching. "But Michael, you have to promise me something." "Anything. When we're in that booth, you have to be the boss. This is your song. I need you to tell me what you want." Michael's throat tightened. "I don't know if I can do that." "Why not?" Michael thought to himself. "Because you're Diana Ross. Because I've spent 5 years watching you command every room you enter. Because telling you what to do feels like trying to redirect the sun." But he said, "I'll try." By 1:30 a.m., they'd been recording for 4 hours. Diana stood in the isolation booth, headphones on, microphone a breath away from her lips. The studio air had gone stale. Coffee, cooling in styrofoam cups. The faint chemical smell of magnetic tape. That particular silence that only exists in soundproofed rooms after midnight. Michael sat behind the glass in the control room, one hand on the talkback button, the other clenched in his lap. "One more take," he said into the mic. Diana pulled the headphones off. Her hair, perfectly styled when she'd arrived at 9 p.m., now showed signs of the long night. "Michael, that was take 7. What's wrong with it?" "The bridge. The vibrato comes in too early." "Nobody's going to notice that." "I'll notice." The engineer, a session veteran named Tommy, who'd worked with Quincy and Stevie, shot Michael a look that said maybe it's time to wrap. Michael ignored him. Diana studied Michael through the glass, and something in his expression, the set of his jaw, the way he wouldn't meet her eyes, made her put the headphones back on. "Okay, one more. But 1 became 3. 3 became 6. Tommy had stopped making suggestions after take 8, had just kept rolling tape and marking the slate. By 2:45 a.m., Diana's voice had that raw edge that comes from pushing too hard for too long, the crystalline perfection giving way to something more human and exposed. She pulled off the headphones again and walked out of the booth, straight through the tracking room, into the control room where Michael sat hunched over the console. "Michael, talk to me. What are you hearing that I'm not?" He couldn't look at her. His fingers moved unconsciously along the faders, not actually adjusting anything, just needing something to touch. "It needs to be perfect." "Why?" She didn't sound angry, just genuinely confused. "Baby, it's already good. It's better than good. Tommy, tell him." "It's a great take, Miss Ross," Tommy said carefully. "But it's Michael's call." Diana sat down in the chair next to Michael, close enough that he could smell her perfume. Ma Griff. The same one she'd worn during the whiz. "This isn't about the vibrato, is it? This song matters to you in a way I don't understand. Help me understand." Michael's finger traced the edge of the mixing board, following the channel strip down to the master fader. His hands were shaking slightly, from caffeine, from exhaustion, from 5 years of carrying this moment in his head. "You remember the whiz? The dance rehearsals?" She frowned, thinking. "Of course, why? You used to say I was learning too fast, that I was making you look silly." Diana's expression softened, remembering. "Michael, I was joking. You were incredible. You made all of us look slow. I know you were joking, but I heard something else. I heard you being human, not Diana Ross the icon, just someone who wanted to be great at something." He paused. "And I promised myself that someday when I was good enough, I'd give you something perfect. Something that would make you shine the way you deserved." The silence stretched between them, filled only by the low hum of studio equipment, the barely audible hiss of tape running through the machine. Tommy quietly stood and stepped out into the hallway, giving them space. Diana reached over and turned Michael's chair so he had to face her. "Michael Jackson, look at me." He did. Her eyes were softer than he'd ever seen them, searching his face like she was seeing him for the first time in years. Not the superstar, not off-the-wall Michael, not the kid from the Jackson 5, just him. "You've been carrying that around for 5 years?" "I tried to write it," he said quietly, the words coming easier now that they'd started. "So many times. Ballads, mostly. Love songs that said everything I felt." He paused. "But nothing was good enough. Nothing felt worthy of you. I'd work on something for weeks and then throw it away because it wasn't right." He swallowed. "And then I was on the Concorde, coming back from London after working on Paul's album, and this melody just appeared. The whole thing, not a ballad, this funky, strong thing. And I thought, this is it. This is finally it. This is what she deserves. And that's why you need it to be perfect." "Yes, because it's the only way I know how to give you what I promised myself I'd give you, what you don't even know I promised." Diana took his hands in hers. Her fingers were cool from holding the mic, calloused at the tips from years of gripping microphones and fighting for every note. "Listen to me," she said. "This song is already perfect because you made it. Because you've put 5 years of caring into 3 minutes and 40 seconds of music." She squeezed his hands. "But if you need me to sing it one more time, I will. If you need me to sing it 20 more times, I'll do that too. Just tell me what you need. Be the boss, Michael. For once in your life, tell Diana Ross what to do." He met her eyes, and for a second he was 19 again, watching her struggle with a dance step and promising himself he'd give her something great someday. But he wasn't 19 anymore. He was 24, and he'd learned that some things don't change no matter how perfect you make them. I need you to sing the bridge like you're asking a question you already know the answer to, like you want something you can't have, but you're not sad about it anymore, just accepting, strong about it. She held his gaze for a long moment, and something passed between them, understanding, maybe, or the acknowledgement of something that had always been there but never named. Then she nodded. Okay, I can do that. Tommy slipped back in as Diana returned to the booth. Michael pressed the talkback. Whenever you're ready. The next take was different. Diana sang the bridge the way Michael described, and something in her voice cracked open. Not pain, exactly, but a kind of bittersweet recognition. A maturity that hadn't been there in the previous takes. When she finished, Michael didn't say anything for a full minute. He just sat there, eyes closed, listening to the playback, his hand covering his mouth. That's it, he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. That's the one. Diana came back into the control room, and they listened to the full track together. When it ended, she turned to him. You're going to be bigger than all of us. You know that? I just wanted to give you something beautiful. You did, baby. She kissed his forehead the way she used to when he was 11. Thank you. After she left, Michael sat alone in the studio, playing the track over and over. Around 4 a.m., the engineer stuck his head in. We're locking up, MJ. You good? Yeah, I'm good. But he sat there for another 20 minutes, listening to Diana's voice wrap around his words, his melody, his 5-year-old promise finally kept. The song wasn't what he'd imagined at 19. It wasn't a love ballad, wasn't a confession. It was something stranger and harder won. Acceptance dressed up as a dance track. 3 months later, Muscles hit the Billboard Top 10. Diana called him, laughing with joy. It's a hit, Michael. People can't get enough of it. You deserve every hit you get. You know what's funny, she said. Every time I perform it, I think about that night in the studio. You made me feel something I didn't expect. What did you feel? Like someone really saw me. Not Diana Ross the icon. Just me. Michael closed his eyes. I've always seen you. There was a pause on the line. Michael, I have to go, Diana. Thriller sessions start in an hour. We'll talk soon. He hung up before she could say anything else, before she could understand, because some things you can't explain, even when you've spent 5 years trying. The world heard Muscles and thought it was about strength, about desire, about the fitness craze sweeping America in 1982. Diana Ross performed it for sold-out crowds and thought it was a gift from a friend who'd become one of the greatest producers in music. Only Michael knew what the song meant to him. The promise he'd made to himself during the whiz rehearsals. The 5 years of trying to become good enough. None of it mattered to anyone but him. The song wasn't about Muscles. It was about the kind of strength it takes to love someone who'll never love you back the same way, and to pour that love into something beautiful anyway. To turn longing into art. To keep a promise to a 19-year-old version of yourself who'd believe that maybe, just maybe, if you created something perfect enough, everything would change. Michael Jackson wrote Muscles for Diana Ross in 1982. 5 years of trying, 5 years of false starts, 5 years of carrying something he couldn't say out loud. She thought it was a gift between friends. He knew it was goodbye to a dream, the dream that the right song might make her see him differently. The song was called Muscles, but the real title, the one he never spoke out loud, was simpler. I loved you the best way I knew how, and this will have to be enough. It was enough, it had to be.